Hello, this is the Growth League podcast. My name is Caleb Clark, and my mission for this show is pretty simple. It's to learn from marketers on how they're playing the great game of marketing leadership, their ideas, experiences, perspective, wins and losses, and the playbook that they've established over time. Listen, there's more than one way to lead a marketing team and a marketing function. So if you're a VP, a CMO, director, or someone aspiring to fill one of these marketing leadership roles in the future, tune in to learn from some of the best in the business.
I don't think I've always been a revenue-focused marketer that wants to impact the bottom line. That's always been sort of my motto, but where I've been taken off track and where then my team is when a CEO is too directive on activities and saying, let's do this, there's a shiny object, let's go here, let's do that. And I put on the brakes. I say, hey, this isn't really aligned with us driving towards these goals, this target persona, this product offering or service offering. Let's rejig. And then if that doesn't get, if that continues, then the team gets spun around and there's only so much protection I can offer to that. And then we're all not doing our job if we're not really aligning to what the CEO wants. So totally, I think it's a multiplayer game, let's call it. And marketing leaders can only be as aligned as their CEO and sales leader are to the goals.
I am here with my guest, Jenna Kellner. She's the VP of Marketing at Minerva. Jenna, great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Great to be here, Caleb. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's been a couple of weeks since we last chatted, so I'm curious if there's been any changes in your world. But before we get into it, what I'd like to understand is what has been your journey as a marketer and a marketing leader? Where did it all start? Are you a traditional marketer through university and up till now? Like, how does your career journey evolved over time?
Fun question, because I love hearing where people come from and how they make it to where they are. I have always been a business marketing person. I didn't really understand tech marketing or, the niches available to me. In those early days, I kind of thought there was just traditional marketing at a CPG or an FI, and then advertising. And I thought those were my only two paths. I did McGill business degree, specialized in marketing, and thought that those were my only options. And so I actually ended up working in nonprofit first.
Okay.
Started at an ad agency and then got a nonprofit job through some of the volunteer work I'd been doing at McGill, and spent a few years there, which was, a lot of marketing was used, but it was a very unique start, small organization, very fun, lots of responsibility, everything from sponsorships to brand work. I was working with a lot of big brands, as you do when you're at a nonprofit, but from a different lens. So I think I credit my ability to sell to that and beg, borrow, and steal and be very resourceful. And then from there, after a few years, I, was like, okay, I want to know what marketing is actually about inside the company. And that's when I landed in tech, and sort of the rest was history. I did dabble in a couple FIs, one in a more traditional role in technology, and then another one, but in the innovation tech side at RBC Ventures. So spent 4 years or more than 4 years at RBC Ventures, helping to build a couple companies there on the marketing side, and then went back to startup land again. And here awesome. I am.
You're a lifer. You're a lifer. Yeah. So, with that exposure to agency side and client side and for-profit and nonprofit, have you felt, whether it was intentional or not, that you've been able to kind of create that holistic sort of spherical approach to what you do today?
Yeah. And I for sure got a lot of pushback over the years of, changing roles frequently every few years and having different types of experiences. But I really do credit it to making me a better marketer, from being on B2C and B2B and being able to, work on various different clients across industries. And I've always done a little bit of consulting on the side as well. So I find that, at first principles, marketing is the same across the board. And it's being able to apply it and understand different industry landscapes that has helped me, I think, adapt quickly and be able to really, jump in feet first, head first into roles and make an impact quickly. And then also being very self-aware of what I don't know. I think having done so much in many different changes in different organizations and businesses, pushes you to say, hey, I don't know this, that's okay. And be able to reach out to the right people at the right time and come in with my expertise, but be very clear on what isn't in my wheelhouse and pulling in the right people for that.
Totally. And no doubt that's something that you've become comfortable with over time, right? Why is it as young marketers do we feel we have to have all the answers? And
For sure.
so Minerva, where you are today, what
Yeah.
what problems does Minerva solve and for whom? And why do you think that you're best positioned to achieve that sweet spot for those folks?
Yeah. Fun question. So Minerva, we're in a compliance technology, right? We help businesses prevent financial crime, and our mission is to end financial crime. And so while the technology is incredibly advanced, it's machine learning and AI based, and that's not a sexy term. It's been that way for a bunch of years now. From it, I don't want to get too technical, but from onboarding to exit, we support financial institutions, fintechs, any regulated entity with their compliance and client risk assessment. And for me, the industry is unique. One, I've been in that seat of a FI. I've also built products that are fintech, and I understand why, when, and how a client needs our business. And then certainly my eyes have been opened onto the depth and breadth of this industry, and I have nowhere near scratched the surface, but it's been very fun to learn. And so from that standpoint, that's been a really nice fit. And then it's a traditional B2B SaaS company, and I've done a couple B2B roles that have set me up really, nicely to have interesting backgrounds and benchmarks for this type of work.
Yep.
And the early stage is very fun. And I've also really
Yeah.
enjoyed building from zero. So I built from zero in a couple spots throughout my career. And it was basic, not zero when I joined, but it's pretty close to zero from a
Right.
marketing standpoint. And it's very fun to lay the groundwork. It's also a lot of work, but
Yeah.
it's really enjoyable to go from 0 to 1.
Yeah, why is it enjoyable for you? Is it about being able to see your thumbprint on things? Is it about having sort of blank canvas in certain scenario? Why do
I
you like?
think part is the challenge itself, is figuring out what works, being able to test things and see what lands and pivot quickly, and really change the trajectory of a company and see it grow. You could really have nowhere to go but up. And that's very fun. Of course, lots of mistakes, lots of side steps, lots of, iterations and changes, but everything you do makes such a big impact, and you really can move the needle so much. And if there's one thread throughout my career, it's the enjoying the impact side of my work and how much I'm able to move that needle.
That's awesome. That's great. Now, I think for listeners, everyone's aware of traditionally what a VP of marketing does, but in your case, what do you get paid to do? What's your mandate?
Yeah. So in an early stage company, it is not typical to hire a VP marketing so early, I guess. But the goal here was that they weren't actually that early from a revenue and ARR side.
Right.
And so they were a little late on hiring marketing. And so
Okay.
the reason the team went with someone who was a little bit more senior in role is so that I could take that team from building and then scaling,
Right.
and sort of playing that in between, because I've seen both sides of that. And so I'm very comfortable in the execution, in the details. I care so much about the details, but can zoom out when it's, board meetings coming up, let's go, or let's do annual planning. Let's, from the HR side of things, let's figure out where we're scaling. And I think the unique side of my brain is, I think, more about the full business and from a revenue standpoint. So as a marketing leader, I've learned that it is not at all about marketing. It's about all the pieces of the business that work together, and my interest in product, in sales, customer success, and those being successful, and how I can impact those from a marketing lens, but also not taking that hat off and just supporting the business, I think makes a good senior leader at an early stage company.
I love it.
And late stage, but
Yeah, I love it. I often state, because I believe deeply, that one of the main reasons why marketing systems fail, those that do fail, is because the marketing system is accountable to activities, not accountable to a business outcome. And
yeah.
you seeing it through that lens naturally orients the whole movement of momentum in that order, or in that way, which is refreshing to hear. You've been there for about a year now, 11 months or so.
Yeah, a little bit under. Yeah, coming
Okay.
up on that in April.
Is there anything that comes to mind that makes you feel really proud when you talk about impact or things that have been accomplished, maybe a struggle or a challenge that you overcame? What are you most proud about over that body of time and work?
Yeah. So I'll share a couple things. I was, having a LinkedIn chat with another marketing leader from a previous company where, he was debunking how, there's this set of things you're supposed to do when you start a new VP marketing role. And he didn't do any of those, and he did a whole other set. And I said, hey, me too. When I joined Minerva, I actually hired a rebrand and website team before I even started, because I knew that was the number one thing they said, hey, we need you to move on this yesterday. So while I was in between, I had a couple weeks, I was ramping up, winding down other things. I had already started meeting with prospective mini agencies to support. Yeah. And I would say the biggest win was relaunching and rebranding the business, refining the positioning, and getting that off the ground as quickly as humanly possible without bulldozing, and making sure it was intentional and bringing everyone along for that journey, and having a successful relaunch within 3 months of joining, which was very fun. And that really set us up, because I really couldn't do great marketing work without that foundation. The site was, and they all admitted it served them until that point. And all startups come to this point where you need to have that refresh, and really needed that foundation to truly do marketing. It couldn't really drive people to a site that wasn't telling the right message, that didn't represent the business, and everyone was kind of avoiding it. So it's how can I market a company that doesn't have a home, a place to send people? And so that was the first order of business. And then I'm really proud of, sticking to my values and beliefs around, a core marketing function, and not scaling too quickly, not hiring too quickly, very much execution over, creating a fiefdom of sorts.
Totally. Which is an approach that no doubt you've kind of established over time. And almost it seems like when you were coming into this opportunity, you saw the roadmap based on experiences in the past, and where were some opportunities that you could add impact right away, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think it also has to do with, I spent a lot of time with the founders before joining intentionally. It wasn't a casual move. It was very intentional. And I was exploring a bunch of different opportunities. And I spent a lot of time with the team and investors to see, what the business really needed. Was I the right person for it? It's not a small hire, and lots of marketing leaders churn out so quickly, and I was really determined for that not to happen. And for
That's great. If certain activities or campaigns or initiatives that you and your team launch fall down and don't work, what is the one thing that the marketing system is ultimately accountable? Whereas if those other things fell down, it's okay, but this thing needs to be fulfilled. What does the accountability to outcome look like? Just high level within your department.
Give me an example of what you mean there.
So in some cases, it's, traditionally it's building systems and pipelines that bring the right people at the right time, at the right volume into a meaningful sales conversation. In other cases, it's just making the market generally more aware. You're more top of funnel side of things. But what do you understand the mandate of the department to be in terms of its being first priority?
Revenue above all else is really the goal. But I think that there are multiple ways to drive revenue, and you have to think about it from a long-term and a short-term standpoint. So, the number, I very much emphasize quality over quantity. So I don't want hundreds of demo requests if they're going to be junk. I'd rather 5 a week if they're going to be really qualified leads. And that's, a B2B SaaS number, not a B2C number. Let's be clear. But I want really qualified, really awesome opportunities coming through. I also want to be spending my time driving brand awareness and trust in the market, because it is a regulated financial industry, and there is a lot of trust around AML and compliance technology solutions, and that we identified early on as one of the major priorities of marketing. So revenue, brand trust are two of my major goals. Obviously hard to measure brand trust, but through velocity, through deal flow, through time to close and all that, and the number of opportunities that are qualified coming in, the ease of conversations, the number of conversations that come back around, right? We're early, so a lot of conversations are still coming from our founders and our investors, but are they coming back? Are they coming through faster? Is the industry aware of us? And that we're seeing pick up quite a bit since we started both of those streams.
That's awesome. Yeah, you have a very, very seemingly clear way of describing what the purpose of the department is. And I think for team members, and you can validate if this is true in your case, it's very freeing and refreshing to have that North Star orientation from the leader, because if you don't, you get into this cycle of optimizing for activities. Have you felt the validation from your team that we know where we're going because Jenna understands where we're going?
Yeah, and I think it's business specific too, right? It's when a CEO gets it also. It
Right.
comes from the top. So I don't think I've always been a revenue focused marketer that wants to impact the bottom line. That's always been sort of my motto. But where I've been taken off track and where then my team is when a CEO is too directive
Ah,
on activities and saying, let's do this, let's do this. There's a shiny object, let's go here, let's do that. And I put on the brakes. I say, hey, this isn't really aligned with us driving towards these goals, this target persona, this product offering or service offering. Like, let's rejig. And then if that doesn't get, if that continues, then the team gets spun around and there's only so much protection I can offer to that. And then we're all not doing our job if we're not really aligning to what the CEO wants. So,
totally.
I think it's a multiplayer game, let's call it. And marketing leaders can only be as aligned as their CEO and sales leader are to the goals of marketing.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah, the classic CEO that comes and says that their nephew at the barbecue told them they need to be on TikTok running this
Yes.
campaign. You got to spend half your time diffusing that thought if it doesn't fit. Anyways,
And
that's
testing it out and going this and pulling the numbers and hey, that blog article was amazing. Let's do more of those. Well, actually, that's not really going to impact this, but there's so many cases of that at bigger and smaller scales. And I get
right.
it. I've been there. I've been that. I understand it. So I think it's about, as I've matured in my career, understanding and managing that and diverting it as best as possible.
Yeah. So in your current setup, is there a pretty healthy relationship and understanding and sort of leash in terms of
For
you
sure.
tell us where to go?
Yeah, there's a huge amount of trust. There's no assumptions that marketing is a, what's it called, expertise of anyone else at the leadership level. So there's a lot of trust there. There's a lot of people who've had great partnering, working relationships in marketing and are huge assets, right? I love working with the executives and SMEs on the team because they know the business better than I do. They are the ones who should be out there. So my job is to get them out there in the right spots. They call me a cat like herder a bit, but we're a small company, so that's the way it is. But there's really no pushback. I think where there's a lot of education is around, how do we calculate certain metrics? How are we measuring CAC, LTV? And that's just, like early stage refinement of how different companies measure it. How are you pricing, things like that, which should be meaningful conversations and continuous debates. They shouldn't be clean cut. And then, it's helping people who don't understand B2B marketing on how attribution does or doesn't work and how, rising tides. And as long as things are moving faster and, just because they clicked on that Google ad, it's really likely not Google that drove that lead there. We're talking B2B SaaS. So, and I've worked in both, so I can clearly say, hey, that's how B2C works. It's not generally how B2B works. 1 in 100 might come like that, but they typically know it's from somewhere else. And so it's continuously educating on that and with finance and folks and showing a full picture to understand how attribution is not something we're going to have a real crisp answer on all the time.
Totally. You're putting very well articulated words to feelings that I have often and things that I potentially can't articulate as well. So that's
I think
great.
it's only because you're asking pointed questions. I'm
Maybe.
sure when I actually have to, defend it, I'm fumbling it too.
No. One of the other reasons why marketing systems fail that I've seen quite clearly and show up a lot of times is it comes down to a capacity and expertise constraint. So we have a great idea, like a vision, a roadmap of where we need to go and the parameters set up in terms of how we're going to measure that fulfillment. But when it comes to execution, it is a challenge that in one degree or another, every marketing leader faces. So as it relates to capacity and expertise and the topic being team, tell me about your team. You have a combination of some internal folks, some trusted external contractors. How do you manage and lead and architect the team?
Yeah, so super lean team here. I have someone who's running growth marketing and I've in final stages of hiring a product marketer. And so that's the full-time team. And the intention is that team is going to take us for another little bit. And then I have, some design contract support, some writing contract support. I have a bit of an event coordinating support, because we're a big events focus right now. That's kind of like EA type work with a marketing lens, sponsorships, things like that. But I think what I want to share here is what's different this round that has been previously is I know when to contract out and how quickly I should be doing it. And I've also been given the latitude to do so now that I've built the trust. So it's, hey, I am like killing myself at all hours doing this event coordination. That is not the best output of my time. And I still have to do a lot of it. Obviously, it doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
But it's where is the money best spent and how is my time best spent? And I'm incredibly conscious of spending my time on the highest impact things as like best possible as I can, and really making sure that the stuff that I can contract out quickly, easily, in a trustworthy way can happen so that I can really make an impact for the business in the right way. It doesn't always work out, but I am quick to pull the trigger. I've made room for myself for contractors for my team. And it's not just me. I encourage anyone on my team to contract out the things that are going to drain them, take them too long, that it aren't going to serve us as a business, and where it makes sense for us to be able to move faster because we're such a lean team with such high growth expectations.
Yeah.
To me, that's the right model, as opposed to just grin and bear it,
Yeah,
which
totally.
we're doing anyway, but
No, I think the thing that you pulled out there, which is interesting, is knowing when and why, as compared to, I think a lot of times for marketing leaders and individual contributors, the moment they feel a little bit of strain, they think that that's the triggering point to just hire somebody but it sounds anyways that you'll go through the pain a little bit to stretch and understand the real need, build the business case around it, and then be intentional about that acquisition of a partner.
Yeah, I mean, I was running all the events and coordination all last year. That's not necessarily VP marketing work, but I think it's incredibly important to understand the industry, the landscape, the marketing around it. And I'm very in it still. I'm picking menus. I'm like, I'm doing all of those things while still doing other things, but I have someone supporting on a little bit of the coordination right now to free up a little time so that my impact is actually better than that. Because I don't think the CEO wants my salary and time spent on menu selections forever. So the context switching is also, I think, key just for running your team. Like, you're never going to get that period of empty time anymore, senior leader in marketing. So being able to switch every half hour, every hour, I think is a superpower that people need to work on.
That's totally. There's a lot of marketing leaders probably listening that, resource their their execution team the same way, a couple of internal people, some external. One of the biggest challenges that comes up, and I'm curious about how you've been able to mitigate risk around this, is, you have a tone, you have a DNA of the brand, you have a strategy. How do you maintain that singularity when you're, working with external contractors who have their own agendas, their own times, their own prioritization of clients? How does that work for you?
So a couple things there. It's work with people you know and trust. So the growth manager is hired on a Google performance person he's worked with before and trusts, right? He's managing some performance in-house, some outside. I brought on a designer that I've worked with 2 previous jobs. I think it's relationships over time. You get to build that sort of pool of people that you trust. And we also have SDRs on my team. I didn't mention that. We're hiring one additional there, and I have one, which may be a little non-traditional for marketing, but owning all of pipeline is really
I love that, actually.
important.
Yeah,
I think it's cohesive and aligned with the revenue focus. And so that SDR actually used to work with me at my last company. And so I think, your strength as a leader is, do people follow you? Do people come with you? Do they refer people to you? Things like that. And so that's one. You can't always work with people And so the other sort of method for me is move through people, trial and error, and then make decisions quickly. If it doesn't work out, it's better for everyone to sort of end the relationship on good terms and say, hey, this isn't a fit. Making sure you set up those trials periods so that there isn't that extended expectation. Let's make sure this is working for both of us. Clear expectation setting. And then ultimately, in startup world, I move so quickly that sometimes I'm not as clear as I could be with expectations or direction. And we have to go through things a couple times, because it's not that I'm not clear, it's that the intention wasn't clear. We don't know what we're doing, and we're trying to give direction as we're flying. And so being able to work with people who are okay with that startup vibe and the changing needs of sort of activities also helps.
I hear you.
But trusted referrals,
Yeah.
and experience working with people helps.
Yeah, there's no replacement for
Yeah.
that, is there? What's your biggest marketing challenge right now?
Ooh, it is probably resources and time. And then market validation and awareness takes time. So
Right.
we're scratching the surface, we're getting there, but it's a very dense industry, and there is hesitancy in AI platforms in a regulated space. And
Mm,
so not only are we trying to build trust and awareness, we're trying to convince people to change the way they're doing what they're doing.
right.
So currently today, investigators don't typically use technology tools to run investigations, or many of them. They're pretty manual, and Minerva offers something that doesn't really exist for that segment of the tech stack. There are many tools within the whole tech stack.
Right.
And so it's a bit of an adoption piece as well. And we're not product led. We
Ah,
can't be. And so I can't just get more people onto the platform to try it. We are B2B intentionally. It doesn't work as a product-led company right now. There are too many limitations around regulations and things like that that can't make it so. So we are trying to see how we can manipulate that a little bit to get more investigators to try the platform in a, compliant way. But it's an interesting challenge for sure.
Define investigators so I understand.
Yeah, so in an organization within a compliance team, there are investigators who, I'm very simplified view, but they're investigating Caleb because a sanction came up for you, or you're a politically exposed person, you're the mayor, and your name was flagged, and a
Podcast host.
transaction was flagged, and you need to investigate Caleb and understand the full picture if you're a risk to the organization. And so a human would do that investigation alongside some technology, and they would typically use Google.
Right. And do you serve mostly the North American market? Or are you in the UK or like?
We're currently focused on North America. We can serve internationally, but our target is North America at the moment.
Okay.
From a biz dev standpoint.
Here's a question for you unrelated to that. What have you established in terms of like actual measurement models, or more felt models and perceived models, such that when you're driving home after work, do you have a pretty good understanding on any given day whether or not you did a good job that day or not?
Daily, it's probably hard to know, other than, I did good work.
Yeah.
Or I had good meetings. But on a weekly basis, it's interesting to see demo increases, website traffic, overall conversations, as an example, on LinkedIn from our founders and from our founding team, having great conversations from their posts, from posting meaningful things. Are we getting more traction because of that? Those are soft things, right? The media attraction drives inbound, right? So press release comes out about something meaningful, a new partnership, a new product, inbound comes in the door. So those are pretty easy metrics. More feeling ones are the way conversations are going, right? So just got off with our CEO this morning, and she said, hey, I'm feeling good. The conversations are changing. The people, like companies it sounds like they are more accepting of not only the software, but of our brand. The conversations are opening up more easily. People start sentences with, hey, I saw you here, I saw you there, I saw you this, I know who you guys are. So it's a little bit hard to measure that, but you feel good when you hear those intangibles.
Totally.
Sure.
No, I love that. Well, I mean, I've mentioned it a few times. I'm very philosophically aligned with you. I think that the company is in a great spot, and I think that the decision on you said it was late, but maybe it's early, but going for that senior experience and leadership, I think it's going to prove well. I really like the way you're playing the game. We talked about it earlier, where I just think this is a big game. It's a serious game, but it is a game, and your approach to testing, to validating or denying hypotheses is very clear, and love the way you're playing the game. So I appreciate it.
Thanks, Caleb. It's always hard to know, one, if what you're doing is, real, like the whole imposter syndrome, like, is this
Oh,
actually working? Should I
all
be
the
doing it
time.
differently? Is this real? And I also hate calling myself senior, even though, apparently
Yes.
that's where I'm at in my career. It's still a very odd thing to say. So
Well, you told me once before you have two little girls. I have two little
yeah.
girls, so we can relate there. I just
Yeah.
awesome.
I
Thank you
guess
so
that
much.
makes us senior.
That's right. Makes me feel very senior too.
Yeah.
Everyone, my guest, Jenna Kellner, VP of Marketing at Minerva. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Caleb, for having me.